Now, when we actually do that, when we actually change the state, or we ask for some properties, or when we bind some events to it. Okay, so we're gonna take the step-by-step approach today. So first step is, how do I bind the event? Okay, I did that. I actually created one of the code here, which is showing like there is a render method, the counter. We did this like on click, and what is this though? This is called event binding. That means there are certain events which are happening on the screen, and on that screen process, we're going to bind that event to something. Now there are multiple ways to bind that. I will give you the best one which is used in industry. Okay, so this is one of the best way. Okay, but this is not very common. So common is generally we bind the events when what I can say, class starts. Will be that. So now let's work on this particular thing. Like on click, I'm just getting this dot click count. Now if I change this, okay, if I remove this guy and just say that okay, this dot click count, this is also not bad, or this is not wrong either. Correct? So if this is happening this way, that means I have to call this particular click count method. Okay, on click. This is supposed to happen. Correct? But then what's the issue? So let's actually load this. Wait for it. I got one, I got two, and okay, hold on. Let me see. Yeah, okay. Suddenly it stopped working, and it says cannot read the property set state of undefined. So that means there is some object which is this, which is not coming through. Correct? It is not coming. So this is not applicable. How? Suddenly what happened? So when you are using this click object, it was working fine up to this point, and suddenly it says this is not applicable. Okay, and although I have this, so now you have to pass this to this method. How? So for that you can actually do this. You can just say dot bind, okay, and then say this. Okay, now will it work? So okay, I got this, and click. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is one way of doing it. Okay, one way of doing it. Like we can bind this here. Okay, you can also bind it within this. So what you can do is you can just say this dot click count equals to the click count dot bind. That's also one of the way. But then that's not a proper way, or that's not the something which is right. So how do you bind the event generally? Now this is also not a common way. Whenever you have event on the page, okay, everyone loves to actually consolidate all those bindings and put it in a constructor. So what happens is I can just say this dot click count. Whenever you have this dot click count event happening, just make sure that this is this dot click count dot bind. Okay, and now you have to bind that to a particular event. So here you go. So what I did is I just said click count is this dot click count, and when it goes here, when I say this dot click count, it means that I'm using this dot click count dot bind this. Okay, so it will come here and it will actually recognize what I'm actually doing here. So will it work now? Yes, it is. It is. Got it? So you'll be able to work accordingly. So this is what this is event binding, and this is the most common way of event binding. Okay, not this one which is actually I'm using it. Okay. Another common process is which we already use, like we have arrow functions, and arrow functions indicating which functions you call to. That's also one of the common method, but most industry adopted method is this one, like adding all the events to the constructor and make sure that event is available for us. So that whenever that event is fired, constructor already knows what to do. Correct? The object already knows that. Okay, so that is event binding for us. Okay, so now moving ahead. Okay, my next question is can we have child component? So can one component have another child component to it? So answer is simply yes. Okay, you can do that. You can add components into components. Okay, make it as a child component. No issues with that. Okay, so let's see. So here I have this hello component which is just saying hello props, or greet component. Okay, which is just doing hello visitor. Cool with that. So I'm just adding okay hello. Yeah, that's fine. Hello visitor. I can make this as a client child event of counter. I can do that. How do I do it? So here, just like you are, so in this JSX, instead of with this particular return type, you can add your own component here. There is nothing wrong. So you can add greet, okay, include, and close that. So when you do that, automatically it will be included. Oh, why it's not included? Okay, you got it. So when you enter it, it will actually automatically import it just like Eclipse. Okay, so Eclipse also helps you to do that. So it will include it now, and you should be able to use this. Now, when I see this, I should be able to grab that content on page, and you can see hello visitor. Okay, on click is still working. Good with that. So this is called child component. I can have one component calling from another, and I can actually create a lot of component structure. As I told you, there are more than 300 components even in the single screen. Okay, there are screens like that. So you have small attachment everywhere. Okay, which are consolidating into a single page. That is completely possible. Questions up to this point? Now moving ahead about our REST call. So for REST call, what we have to do or what we have to change in this particular class. So we'll just learn like what exactly we need to do, but then we have to make sure that we are up to that particular level to understand REST calls. Now what we understood is we can actually load some parameters on load of the screen, okay, which is constructor. Now, suppose I want to actually call a RESTful web service. Will you be use a constructor for that? So suppose this is my page, okay, and constructor is responsible to create the component layout, okay, or the properties or initializations here. Is it a good way or is it a good method to actually call a constructor? Answer is no. Because if you are actually calling a RESTful web service and if your RESTful call fails, your component will not be created on the page. So you cannot even show that no data found. Correct? So you will not even be able to show that because there is no constructor at all. So constructor is not a good place. But with this, is render a good place? Maybe. Render may be a good place, but by the time you are in the render method, you are actually executing everything and everything is created for you. Probably the layout is also created. Half of the data, half baked data is already available, right? So what you will end up having is you'll have a half baked screen. So some fields and some fields are not there. So some empty fields because this was a RESTful call which is not successful. So render method is providing a half-baked product if RESTful fails, and constructor will not render a product or will not create a component if it fails. So that means both of these places are not good places to call RESTful web service. Then who is? Correct? So now you need a lifecycle callbacks. You need something like init destroy. Now remember that when we actually use servlets, we use init method than constructor because constructor, if init method fails or throws the exception, at least you have constructor ready so that somebody is serving that. That was the reason. Same reason here, we have init methods, we have destroy methods, but their names are a little different. Well, with that, so names are a little different. So we gotta understand what are the lifecycle callbacks of each and every component. So the component class, how do we use it, and where exactly you should view a RESTful call. Okay. So RESTful call should be in between this. So when my constructor is done and my render layout is done, but my about to execute or about to create a component on screen, at that point I can just go ahead and check the rest and come back. If the rest fails, it's still okay because I do have my render method completed and I can show some data like some error message or something that point of that data does not load. Okay. More thing is I can actually change the state with the REST call. Correct? So what I can do is I can just create a state with empty objects, okay, and call the rest, and when the rest call is successful, I can load that state. If the rest structure is not successful, I can just still show empty state, and I can add some errors into this particular empty state and I can show those errors. Right? So I have a full proof plan here, but then I don't know how to call rest. So for calling rest, we're gonna learn axioms. Okay, axioms is some add-ons. Okay, and to React. And another thing is we need to learn about lifecycle callbacks. So today we're going to focus our discussion on lifecycle callbacks, axioms we're going to learn tomorrow with the RESTful calls. So we will actually add RESTful call. Okay, we'll receive the RESTful web service details, and then finally probably on Sunday we'll understand Redux. So Redux is also a very interesting topic. Okay, which will actually end our discussion on React. Well, with this, so now come back here, try to understand what's going on in lifecycle callbacks. So eliminating, deleting all these things. So what's going on here? Your counter class, your constructor. Constructor is also a lifecycle callback, right? Which is a kind of an initialization mechanism of a particular thing. So constructor method, even your which this method, your render method is also a lifecycle callback, correct? So this is basically lifecycle method. Okay, this is gonna happen. This is your service method, like do post and do get. So now I want to actually add some more methods into it. So let's come back here and understand lifecycle callbacks of a method. Okay, parent and child component, we saw that. Okay, come back here. So component lifecycle method. So let's have some theory. Adding them and testing them is not a big deal. So first thing is constructor, a special function that will get called whenever a new component is created. Okay, initializing state, binding events handler, all those things gonna happen here. Okay, I just told you how to bind event handlers, and initializing state also we know that. Okay, how to create a state. Okay, what you don't want to do in constructor is do not cause any kind of side effects. So, okay, so if there are any issues in a constructor, your component itself will not get created. So if the component is not created, nothing else matters because that component is not there on the screen. What are you going to do about it? Okay, no, not even an error message can be shown because the component itself is not constructed yet. Okay, and then you can actually use super.props, okay, directly override this state. So you can actually use this, okay, to actually get the properties and set the state. Good with that? So you can set the state out of the properties. So constructor either can be an empty constructor or it can take props as an input. So whatever props are, you can actually pass it to super and you can pass it to the state also. Good with that? That means constructor is used to read the properties. Constructor is also used to read or assign the state object. With that, that's a constructor. We use that. Okay, I'm not going to write that method as of now. We'll write all of them consolidated. Let's understand the next one. The next one is static method, which is not used frequently. Okay, I'm not going to use it. I'm just letting you know that for interviews. The method is static method, so you do not have this attached to it. Okay, it's get derived state from props. So what exactly we have to do is when the state of the component depends on the changes in the props over the time. So what happens is you are passing some properties from the screen. Okay, from app.js you are passing some properties, and change of the state, that means change in the value of private data of that component, is dependent on what you pass from props. This is not common, people. Okay, this is not common. We generally do not change props dynamically. Props are hard coded. Props are something which you want to pass as a CSS properties. Okay, so props are generally hard coded, generally on screen. That's not called as hard coding. That's called programming. So props are programming features. Okay, so we do not actually depend on props for changing the events. That's why this method is not very popular. Okay, now here you have to actually return the state. So if you are deriving a new state on the basis of property, suppose I just send a name. I change that name from H2K to H2KInfosys. Okay, on that name change, I want to change other properties like my course name should reflect that. Okay, so state.course name. I will create a new state and I have to return new state from this. But this method has a performance impact. Second thing is, you should not do here is cause any side effect. If you cause any side effect, you actually end up affecting your state and ultimately showing the screen bad. So you do not really want to touch anything here like HTTP calls. Don't do that. Okay. Now this is the method you should actually always do, which is called render method. Render method do what? Only required methods. Okay, so this is only required method in the constructor. You know that even constructor is not there, that's fine. Okay, get derived definitely not there. But if you have a render method, that's it. You actually created a component. So component creation itself is because of render method. Okay. Render is responsible to read the properties. Render is responsible to change also. Render is able to read the state. Okay, and return JSX. What you don't want to do in render is change the state. Do not change state in render. Okay, if you're changing the state in the render method and if you fail somewhere, you are ultimately failing an entire DOM is document object model, or the page, overall page HTML page, overall page HTML. That is called document object model. So you do not want to create a RESTful call here as well, because this RESTful call will ultimately change what? State. That's what we learned, right? We initialize with the empty parameters, we call RESTful web service, and we change the state to new params. That means the state change, and we should not do state change in the render method. Render method is to render HTML components. Do that what it says. Okay. Child components lifecycle methods are also executed with render. We can do that. Yes, child components will be executed. If there is a child component inside render, all the lifecycle operations of child will get executed within that render, and then further execution happens. Remember that. Okay. So if there is a child you declared here, like you declare greet, all the process inside the greet will execute it, and only that the cursor will come back to the original component. Okay, so that is render. So everything I'm saying that I should not call HTTP, where exactly I should call HTTP then? Excuse me. So the best method to actually call an HTTP request or RESTful request is component did mount. Okay, so these are mounting method. There are two methods here: component will mount and component did mount. So component will mount is actually telling you that component is going to get mount. Mount is what is actually getting shown on the screen. Okay, shown on the screen, that is will mount. So will mount is as immediately after before render method. Okay, so component will mount. Render do the mounting operation. That means that component is mapped on the screen. The initial data which is in the render method is executed. Child data is executed. Now I'm asking component did mount. So component did mount method is basically used and can be having a side effect. Now you have that component on screen. Now only thing you want to do is change the state, correct? So change this. If you fail, it's completely okay, because I do have that component ready. I do have that component shown on screen already. Okay. So component did mount invoke immediately after component and all its children component have been rendered to the DOM. That means HTML page. Cause side effect. You can cause side effect here. Okay, interact with the DOM or perform any AJAX call to load the data. Okay, and as soon as you change the state anyway, now you know that the state changes, the data changes. That's what a click counter is all about, right? What exactly happening here? State changes, state of the object variable changes, and you see the change in the state on the screen. Okay, so state is nothing but the exact replication or reflection of what's seen on the screen, right? So if I change the data on the screen to show the data from the RESTful API in component did mount, I will be able to show the RESTful data on the screen. Okay, so this is the best method to actually show the data or actually call a RESTful call. So now what we're going to do is we'll actually create a component did mount method. We use axioms. Axioms actually connect to the RESTful call, comes back with the result. If it comes back with the result, we'll show that result, change the state, okay, add that results into it. Okay, and if it is an error, if you are not able to, then you will add error clause into it. But that happens in component did mount. Cool with that? Moving ahead. Are there other lifecycle methods? So instead of taking one by one, we'll take everything, we'll understand the theory, and we'll actually add lifecycle methods to our click counter or some other class, and then use it, okay, and test it. And tomorrow we're going to learn axioms. Okay, so component lifecycle method actually works on updating also. So whenever you are updating some data, okay, whenever there is an update in the state, okay, you can use update methods on component lifecycle methods. So the first method is get derived state from props. As I told you, if there is any change in the property, it will actually change the state, but it's not a useful method. Okay, we discussed that. Next thing is, if you are updating the state, should component update. This is one of the method which will actually perform a certain. See, I do not want to update the state every now and then. Okay, every now and then if I change to change that state. Okay, so I tend to make the restore call or tend to do the mounting operation and again. My screen optimization is actually very bad. Okay, my performance optimization is not happening, right? So I don't want to do that. So I can actually decide which property load should affect the screen loading. Okay, so remember, if you are entering some forms in certain fields, if I enter, let's say, my country as USA, at that time the form refreshes, but when I enter name, it doesn't matter. When I enter last name, doesn't matter. Okay, even address doesn't matter. Suddenly I select country or I select state. Okay, page get refreshed and new data gets loaded. That is, component should update. So component should update by the change of the property. Okay, and you can derive a next state here. Now should component update is asking for question, that means you have to return something here. So if you return false, it will not update, but if you return true, then you can update that. So you have entire if else conditions in should component update, and you have comparison between your previous state or properties and state, and make sure that on the basis of that you will be loading the components or not. Okay, so it dictates if the component should re-render or stay there. Okay, static one. Okay, it is used for performance optimization. Otherwise what will happen with every event, with every change, okay, state will change. I don't want that. Okay, now what you do not want to do here is perform side effect. Now in the same example, if I entered HTTP, so if I'm calling an HTTP call, okay, by entering country or state, what's going to happen? The form will not get loaded back and user will feel cheated. Okay, okay, user will feel because of your HTML screen is not working or something. Okay, suddenly, or your RESTful call is not working, suddenly you see that the screen is not loaded. So you should not cause side effect because you are touching the state. Good with that? Questions up to this point? We're going to use these methods, don't worry. Again, these methods are not commonly used methods. Even this one is unless and until I know what I'm doing, I should not do it. Okay, unless and until I'm expert and pro enough to understand that this is what's going to happen and this is what I'm going to do, I should not use it. Okay, what we are covering right now, these lifecycle methods are common interview questions. Okay, so we are covering that. I will also tell you, I'm also telling you some of the rare methods because this is what they ask. Now there is one more method here, will component update also. Okay, so that will component update, will component mount, and will component dismount, all these methods are discontinued, or rather they are not supported anymore. Okay, I will show you. They have published, React actually published a separate blog for that, telling that this particular thing should not be used further and they will remove that. Okay, it's kind of a deprecated methods because of bad usage and all those things. Okay, so I will show you that stuff. Okay, moving next, you have render method, so I did not actually mention that. Okay, this is good. Get snapshot before update, so called right before the changes from the virtual DOM are to be reflected in the DOM. So the virtual DOM is something on your in your programming side. There is a DOM ready which is not it on the screen, and there is a screen which is available, correct? So if you want to what I can say, take a snapshot like what's going on there. Okay, you can use get snapshot before update. You want to check the data of the previous screen, previous state, and current screen, current state is anyway accessible on the program. Okay, so get snapshot before update have a previous properties and previous state. Okay, and program this dot state will actually give you the existing state of the thing, and then you can compare. Okay, and you can actually render the state. Good with that? Capture some information from the BOM method will either return null or return a value. Return value will be passed to the third parameter to the next method. Okay, moving it, not so common, not so common. I'll tell you which is common. Component did update, this is the method you should actually use. So this is called after the render is finished and re-render cycle, and you can cause side effect here. So component did mount and component did update, all these methods are for what? Causing side effects. You can actually cause a side effect here. So every update is done, it's mounted on the screen, it's shown on the screen. Now whatever you want to do, you can do. Okay, so suppose now where exactly I use component did mount and component did update, the process or the changes are like did mount is used to call RESTful web service. Did update is used if I want to transform that data and show it on the screen. So the data is shown on the screen now. I'm updating something and I want to transform the data. I want to change the date format. I want to change the way price looks. Okay, so those things happens with the help of did update. Okay, so the formatting options happens here. With this, you can cause side effect because if you fail, you still have there is a state which is callback state, which is a current state. You still have it, so don't worry about that. Okay. Okay, so now this is it. I am actually going to create a program. We'll add a parent child, okay, a component, and then add some additional properties to it, okay, additional methods to it, and execute that in the console. See how it works. So let's work on programs now. Okay, finish that. Come back here, close everything. So here I'm going to create a method, a component first. So in component class, I'm going to create a file. My server is up and running. This is important. I'll create parent. Let's say parent.js, not an issue. Parent.js, and I also create a child.js. Okay, so that I'll also create a child, and I'll check with how do I use or how does these methods get called in parent-child relationship. Okay, so I'll just create a child.js. Okay, so I have the parent.js and I need to create a component, and I'm using RC, and you can just create RCC, which will create a component for me, or RCF. That's also fine. So these things are what I can say, snapshot, React, or what is called snapshots. Okay, you can add it in your visual code. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, coming back here, I'll delete these props. I'm not worried about that. Parent.prop types. I don't actually want that. Okay, so all these methods are added here. Okay, this class parent, extend component, constructor props. Okay, super.props. You can actually set some property here. As of now, it's not needed, but that's fine. I'm just with this dot state. Okay, we don't need it for initial testing. We will do it later. Yeah. Okay, so this dot state equals, and then you're gonna add the state. Let's say message. Okay, on-screen message. So this is to test update. Okay, so this is it. I'm not adding this. Now, cool. So the state is updated, and I'm cool with that. Now, see the method. The component will mount. Okay, so call immediately before mounting. Will call. So now this is not recommended method. Component did mount is the recommended method. Okay, so what I will do here, I will just add some debug statements. I'll just say console.log, and here I'm going to specify that you are using parent component did mount. We did this in Java. We are doing it here. Now, as soon as we use that particular method, you're going to get some warnings. So component did mount is the method we should use. Let me copy paste the console everything, and then we'll see the changes. Will receive props, again not recommended. So all these will methods, right? So they are discontinued. Component will update, component did update, component will unmount. Yeah, this method is fine. Okay, so there is no issue with that. Other, this is a destroy method. So did update, this is good. Will update, not recommended. Should update. So whenever there is a should, right, you have to return something. Okay, so should always returns a boolean, right? So should update, should component update. Okay, so here you will just say return and true. Yes, go ahead and update that, no issues. Okay, component will receive props, component did mount. Any other change? Yeah, we added all the methods here. Only thing I'm going to show on the screen is h1 tag, and here I say value of this dot state dot message. Show it on the screen and I'm done. Okay, but I have not added this parent anywhere. So now go ahead and add that in app.js. So go on app.js. Okay, and you can just change it to parent. We generally have parent get loaded. Yeah. So import is automatic. We don't have to worry about that. And close the tag here itself so that okay. So counter is undefined. That's fine. So counter, you can just undefine that. You're done. Awesome. So this is to test update. Okay, so this is why we'll see that later. Now I did lot of component.mount things. Control Shift I, gonna import in, so gonna start inspect option. So Control Shift I, and I will see console. Okay, so I can see this parent component will mount, and see here will mount has been renamed and it's not recommended to use. Okay, so React unsafe component lifecycle. Okay, so you can just open this blog, update on async rendering. So these three methods should not be used. One of the biggest lessons we all learned is that some of our legacy component lifecycle tend to encourage unsafe coding practices. Okay, so they are kind of disconnecting that. Okay, and they are adding unsafe prefix to it. Okay, not done yet, but they will be doing that. To do this, so let's remove those methods. Okay, we really don't want to encourage anything which is not safe enough. So will mount will not be there, then will receive props will not be there, and then will update will not be there. That's why I did not even cover those methods. Okay, this is it. So if I come back here on this page, on the React page, if I see this in console, I say parent component did mount. Okay, now I'm directly seeing component did mount. What happened to other processes? Because I do not have console there, I should have a console for constructor also. So let's add a console here as well. So you have constructor call, and you have call here as well. And you say render. This is render method. Rather you should add it's actually end of render method, but that's fine. Okay, so now here you go. You can just go back to the screen and see this. So this parent constructor, this is like before state, after state. Okay, don't worry about that. So before state is created, after state is created. Same thing with render, and you have component did mount. Cool with that. So when render is actually set, component did mount is actually called. Now this is where you want to change the state and call the method. Okay. So now you got to know. But don't worry about twice. Okay. This is like because of state we are using in this, we are actually getting this twice. That's completely fine. Cool with that. Now if I have a child component into it, okay, suppose I have a child component. Let's do that. Let's copy this code, entire stuff, put it in the child, and just change the names. This is child. Okay, so I'll have a message. This is push to message from child, and then you can just add. So you can Control C, Control H, and V. So child, C child D. Okay, and then go ahead and make the changes. So replace, and you have replace all. Cool. Good with this. Now you want to do what? You want to add that particular child here as a component. So let's go ahead and add it here, and I'll go here. I'll say child. Correct. Close that particular option. Render the screen, and you should be able to see new scene. Now see here, parent constructor, parent render, Immediately after parent render, you have child constructor, child render, and then child component did mount. So now child completes everything here, and then parent component did mount. So all the children inside parent or inside render, whichever you have specified, okay, all the children will get mounted first, and then only you should go ahead. Okay, this is fine. This is cookie associated and all this. That's okay. But with this, now what about update methods? Can I add update? Yes, you can. So you already added updated methods, but nothing got called, right? So why? Because we are not updating anything. So when you change the state, you'll be able to call that particular thing. So now how do I do that? So come back here and change the state. How do I change the state? Let's say we add a click of button. Yes, we do have class tomorrow. So we have a button. Okay. You say click me, and you know what to do with that button, right? So you can have on click. All these methods are camel case. Okay, JavaScript methods are not camel case. Here I can just specify directly, use arrow functions, and then specify a method name. The method name is click me please. That's a method call, and that method does not exist, so you have to create that method. So click me please, create the method, and here do what? Here you will just say this dot set state. Okay, and set state is a method, so arguments, in that arguments you want to add state, and state is message equals message column new state should trigger update methods. Okay, okay, there is an error here that this is not exist. Why? Because you are not using this is important, this dot. Okay, so now we have click me please. Click me please is changing the state, it's loading that state, and as soon as it happens, you'll get the method calls from update methods as well. So there is which is update method component did update. Okay, so that's what the method is. So let's go ahead and run that method then. So you got this click me, you got all the components rendered. I will just delete, clear everything, and click on the button and see what happens. So now you got should component update. So this is true. Yes, you should. Okay, then if it is updating, render that again. Like if it is rendering, again you are asking for should a component update in child, because child is also getting updated. Okay, with your state changing state, it will check that state as well. Okay, it says render of child, then child component updated and did update. So it's not did mount. Okay, so it's did update. So it's basically updated now. Okay, so on click of something, if you want to update that particular state, you can do that right here. So with this, questions up to this point? Awesome. So what we learned today is how do we actually get lifecycle method calls. Now we're going to do what? We're going to use our component did mount method to actually call axioms and RESTful web service. So what we're going to do, we will actually call a RESTful web service tomorrow. We will actually trigger a URL. There is a template RESTful web services available which is showing a JSON. We'll fetch that JSON. We'll add the address into JSON and show it on the screen. This is not hard as you think. This is very simple. React directly understand your JSON data, so you don't have to worry about that. Cool with this? So now we'll do that tomorrow. We're gonna stop our discussion today. We have covered enough. We'll stop today and we'll continue tomorrow with RESTful call, and then finally you'll learn about Redux on Sunday. Cool with that? So that being said, I'm stopping here. Let's continue tomorrow. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one.